Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, live here on the Fringe FM. I was just panicking, like I couldn't get my freaking camera to work for anything. So, like 10 seconds before the broadcast started on YouTube, the camera went blank. Like, there was no camera. So, yeah, I've been scrambling. But tonight, it is the 8th, August the 8th, 2024. We got a little bit of a late start, and that's only because I was on the 101 podcast, all right? So, it was well worth it, though. I didn't even get to jump in here and start this thing until, like, maybe exactly at 9 o'clock. But it's well worth it. It was something I didn't want to miss. But it's not Friday here, but it's probably Friday in Australia. It's Friday for Sudi, right? It's still Thursday here, though. But it's the late night. What time is it there, Sudi? What time do you listen to this show? Just curious. I don't know the times. But I still want to do this research with the out-of-body thing. I got a ton of people, like, listening to the out-of-body experience right now. The Robert Monroe's book. I count, like, 8 people that say they're listening to the audiobook right now. And last night's show was pretty intense because we played some of what Thomas Campbell was doing when he was in the Monroe Institute, talked about it, discussed it, and then ended it with a person that was trapped between worlds, which is kind of intense, right? It was like a person that had died and didn't, I guess, wasn't going on to the next world or didn't make it into the next world or something like that. So, yeah, it's midday over there. Well, that makes sense. That makes more sense anyways. But for those of you that come out to the show and then listen live, whether it's on the radio stations, tune in and TalkStream Live or YouTube, or even the people that listen to the podcast, I really appreciate your time. We could use some feedback, even though this is fun for me. This is what I like doing. I do understand that there has to be some type of I've just been thinking a lot how to make the show better. But I'm pretty stubborn, right? Like, I like to just do stuff my way and do what I want. And it's really hard for me not to do that for some reason. However, though, like if you've got any feedback that you want to send to the show, you can send it to producer@fringe.fm. And you could check out our website at fringe.fm too. So, yeah, that's been my day. Did a couple of tarot readings. That was cool. Talked to Juan, did his podcast, talked about some Bigfoot stuff, and now we're here. So, yeah, 3 a.m. in the UK. Makes no sense at all. Okay, all right. So hey, this is our tribe, man. So we're trying to get into this melding thing. I'm not saying it's real. That's bothering me. Like this stupid little flip. I'm not saying that it's real, but if it is real, I want to find out about it. So we may have to listen to some more Explorer stuff. That's what we're going to do, is just research this instead of maybe reading a book. We're going to research it tonight, last night of the week. I'd like to start putting out weekend content for the Patreons too, because they don't really get much, and they've been supporting the show, and they need stuff, and I just want to have something that's like really, really, really cool for you guys. So I'm working on that too. Other than the audio, the stuff for the tattoo cards. By the way, about those tattoo cards, I am looking for a different vendor. The people that make the cards that I order them through is called Game Crafters. So you give them your designs, they make the cards for you. They're really high quality, and they'll even ship them for you too. And the more you buy, the cheaper they are. But I can't afford to buy a whole bunch of them, so I just do it per order. And it takes a while because they're backed up, right? So they're used to doing bulk orders and print and stuff like that. So it takes a while if it's just one order at a time. And the only way to get it to ship to you really fast is to pay double. Yeah, they got a pretty good business model. But I'm not doing that, and I'm not going to ask you to do that. Unless you want to, then just hit me up and, I'm kind of curious about this melding thing, though. So we're going to go back to the Monroe Institute. We're going to take a trip back to the 80s, the 70s, whatever year this is. And tonight we're going to listen to, hopefully I can find some more Thomas Campbell clips and Robert Monroe, but we're going to listen to this person talking about the male and female parts of the self. Hopefully, if I can get it to start. It's not to verify what we talk about as far as like the male and female parts of the self. It's just me trying to find anything having to do with melding, right? So hopefully that'll come up. But in the book that we read, there was a lot of stuff, man. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that made sense. There was a lot of stuff that went along with it. I just got through talking to a guy that said that he went out of body. He listened to the Monroe tapes at the Conjuring House and went out of body and went to heaven and hell. So is that a case of him taking his beliefs? I don't know. But here we go. Here's the male and female parts of the self.
Areas of consciousness using new methods. We began to call them our explorers. We also came to regard them as a courageous, gutsy group of individuals. In terms of methods, it must be stated that no drugs or electrical brain stimulation are used in such experimentation. The reason is not particularly ethical or legal, but more the fact that we have found clarity of consciousness is essential, under near total control and without distortion. Even a prior cup of coffee can affect the result in several of our explorer group.
Trying to fix the audio here.
The recordings themselves were taken from two-way audio lines between the laboratory and isolation chamber during an experimental session. The researcher in the laboratory feeds audio signals into the headphones worn by the explorer in the chamber. In addition to such vocal reporting, electrodes attached to the explorer's head and body transmit biological information to the laboratory monitoring unit. These are recorded on separate channels for subsequent evaluation.
And that's not my audio
Much
echoing,
of the
that's his
sessions with
audio.
our explorers is taken up with testing audio patterns, and we think a sample of this will give you a more balanced viewpoint of the work taking place in our facility. Here is TC, our physicist, doing just that in his own style of reporting.
It's Thomas Campbell.
About 30 seconds ago, my non-physical body would oscillate with the oscillations of the tone. Head to foot oscillations back and forth. Oscillation in my head, which is strange with this higher frequency signal. About 10 or 15 seconds ago also caused the non-physical body to oscillate. The oscillations, though, are not at the frequency of the sound. They're usually around 1 or 2 or 3 hertz. Hit a harmonic to a natural frequency. A small oscillation here. A wobbling inside the physical.
This is in response to a 40 hertz binaural beat.
So muffled, isn't it? Like, I'm
Right.
trying to fix it.
To it. It seems to cause about a 1 cycle oscillation, and also I can feel a much smaller 4 cycle oscillation, but both of them are there at the same time. Also, as the sound gets unbalanced from one side to the other, the non-physical body tends to tilt toward the side the sound is loudest on. I still feel a small 4 cycle oscillation, the usual pulsation. When the sound was there, I had superimposed 1 cycle and 4 cycles. Sometimes it would change, sometimes both at the same time, and sometimes it would run from 1 up to about 4.
Correction, the last that we had was on a 400 binaural beat. Coming up is the 40 binaural beat.
It wasn't a particularly tone, which is probably why it gripped the attention. It was not also a particularly relaxing tone. Felt right in the head.
Yeah, it sounds weird, doesn't it?
Producing a high frequency vibration about maybe 15 hertz. 20 hertz. 4 cycle pulsation state starting to get a little stronger. About a 10 hertz vibration in my whole body. The sound is the most pleasing of the 3. The low frequencies seem to be less irritating.
This is a 40 hertz binaural beat in separation, and you're hearing the report on it.
It doesn't grip the attention so much.
So this is Robert Monroe, like, and Thomas Campbell messing with binaural beats back in like the 70s, creating hemisync. But they're going to get into something pretty special here that I think might have something to do with melding, if I can get to it.
Would be very heavy, It's like they intrude on your consciousness and fix your awareness to them. Which does have the good side effect of taking the awareness away from the physical. Not particularly pleasant, although not uncomfortable or anything. Sufficient altered state for the work that we're doing. So for the last 5 or 10 minutes I've been practicing these instructions. It does put me in a different space. I'm still a little unfamiliar yet, just where that space is in relation to the ones I'm familiar with. The technique is essentially one of waking up rather than one of sleeping. I can explain it in more detail later. One uses the 12 state as a starting point for this technique, or something like a 12 state.
Yeah, we're still looking for the melding. This is titled The Male and Female Principles Within the Self. So I guess he's, as they're going through like all of these different hurts and experiments and stuff to try to figure this out, Robert Monroe and Thomas Campbell are doing this together. I guess he's about to start talking about this. I just don't know when, so I haven't found it.
Is made to clear one's mind, to work on clarity. It feels like waking oneself up, but in the process of waking up the mind and making it clear, very much like it is clear in awaking consciousness, the body actually tends to drift out of consciousness even further. And one is left with the strange sensation of fully waking consciousness without body, which of course is the desired goal. But this effort to wake up seems to be a very effective approach to take after one is already in 12. The effort to mentally wake up.
What happened to my green screen?
I'm not sure. I was just given the idea to try this. Like, wake up. Wake your mind up. Clear your head. And as I began to fool with it, at first I thought it would bring me out of this state, would bring me back to C1, but it doesn't seem to do that at all. The space is different. And so it's more like a helping voice rather than a personality. A very good space for communications. It doesn't have the same feeling that I've come to regard as like depth. It's very clear.
I'm going to try some.
Very much like being wide awake in C1, mentally. But physically even more body removed than 12. It's a cleaner space, a clearer space, not as foggy or as dark a space, a lighter space, not as heavy. While I was talking, I've come back to my usual state, but I have been able to travel back and forth through mentally, working at this waking up thing, and then as I relax it, I immediately drift back into the familiar state. It takes some discipline. If one lets go, then one tends to drift to a less awake state. This source who doesn't really wish to make himself or identify himself, and first I thought maybe it was Thor, and then I realized that wasn't so.
He does that.
It was different. I tried to say, well, who are you? What is your purpose? And I just kind of got a backing away, not wanting to communicate there, so I thought I'd leave and come back and report. After a fashion, but not human. Just an intelligence. I noticed that my body, hands and feet, seem to alternately sort of like tense up, like the muscles will come under tension, and I become aware of it, and then I relax them, and they sink kind of down with relaxation, and then add a little bit, I'll notice that there they are, kind of tensed up again, like the muscles contract slightly.
We have 5 minutes.
You notice
information. It seems the entity of which I was first speaking was somewhat of a just one of the.
You notice he's only able to go out of body for like the longest he's been out of body before he comes back and reports is 5 minutes.
And since he kept shirking off like toward the shadows, and I didn't get much information, I asked to speak to somebody else, somebody in charge. I was then confronted by what I perceived to be a humanoid entity, and instead of being off to the upper right in the shadows, was more right in front of me. And I said, "What are you doing?" And what and why are you doing? And his reply was quite surprising. He says, "Well, you and your group did ask us to help out, didn't you? You have asked for assistance."
All right, so we got contact.
And we are here to help, or we are trying to produce a almost like they're building the necessary structure to aid in this communication. And the plan is, when they have their part ready, that they will be able to bring us to where they are so that we might communicate more easily. I asked him if he was, I said, will it work? Will you be able to capture some of us and bring us to your reality? And he thought that it would work, but I had detected a slight bit of uncertainty, like he was pretty sure that it would work out, but it still was probing into the unknown for him too.
He's not like the individual, the one that you started with. Not like that.
Well, what just happened?
No, this person, unlike the others, seemed to be a very dynamic and forceful type intelligence. Maybe even a scientist or explorer in his own reality. He spoke very directly, very matter-of-factly, like somebody who was about his business. Like if you walked in and asked somebody to explain what they were doing, and they had full command over whatever it was that they were doing. An in-charge, dynamic type.
Surprised that you're being here, there.
I still can't hear what Robert Monroe's saying.
Not shocked, surprised, but I did get the feeling that he thought it was quite unusual.
Oh, is the entity surprised that you're there? Okay.
But he wasn't shocked. It wasn't like, what are you doing here? Or anything like that.
Not commonplace, but not unexpected. Is that it?
Yes, I believe so. It was like...
He makes these weird sounds, doesn't he?
If he's working to make clearer and better communications between his group and our group, that he was pleased with the opportunity to communicate even on a much lesser level this little bit that we have communicated.
Does this knowledge seem to be greater than ours? Technology?
It seemed stable and complex, much as our own, but of course I would describe it as non-physical from my own reference point.
Not within the parameters of our physical.
He would describe our reality as non-physical from his own reference point.
But certainly not in our reality here, our physical matter, Earth.
No, it was outside of our physical reality. Yeah, very definitely so.
The question, of course, what reality? At a later session in another testing pattern, TC met an old friend. Here's what happened.
Just in the sense that it was more difficult to expand the chest to draw in the air, just like maybe a lead blanket had been put over my body, making it harder to breathe. Not an uncomfortable sensation, just a peculiar one. I still feel the effects of it. It hasn't really disappeared much yet. almost like a centrifugal force, like I'm in a centrifuge, being pressed into the bed.
There we go. That way you know who's talking.
Oh yes, I have been all along. He says the beats up in the low hundreds will facilitate visualization.
Any specific in the low hundreds?
It sort of depends. It's not as broad a resonance. It will be sharper for, at one place for differing individuals. I kind of just sort of get anywhere from 100 to about 300 should increase the visualization. And this 50 hertz thing should increase the awareness. And all of these tones can be played simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yes. Even though the ear will not consciously be able to differentiate and pick them out in the various beats and so on, the nervous system does indeed hear each one separately as well as all of them together.
Still, we're so this is titled The Male and Female Parts of the Self. We're 25 minutes into this, and he's just now gotten to where he's talking to like an entity, and they're trying to develop some kind of communication.
No. If the mind-body can be put into first the theta state, then a greater awareness, and then a sharper visualization, this will facilitate the healing, both self-healing and healing of others. And in this sense, these tones will aid the healing process, but they're very general. They will aid all processes that require focusing of thought energy.
I see. Related to this, you asked or what relationship this second self has to the physical body.
What relationship does it have to the physical body?
The energy body.
Or the energy body?
We understand. Are you
And then I can't hear anything else.
What we already understand about it is pretty much the way it is. The second self or energy body is a truer, he says, representation of the personality, and that the physical body is a projection of this energy body in physical matter reality. He actually used the analogy, it's like a shadow on a physical matter plane. It seems that the energy body itself may indeed be a shadow of a yet more refined essence of personality. I'm not sure how far this telescoping thing takes place. That's as far as it seems to go.
Sorry to interrupt, but it seems that we have run out of time on this side of the cassette. So turn your cassette over, and we will continue on the other side.
So I'm a nerd. I could listen. I swear I could listen to these forever. If it's Thomas Campbell talking, especially, you know. I wish that I could make out what Robert Monroe was saying a little bit better, but
Astral, if he is ever in heaven.
He says, oh yes, but not as it relates to our time.
I see. Doesn't mean on here in planet Earth, did it?
Yes.
Not relating to our time. What does he mean? Says this.
He would not be a contemporary.
what's up, Cosmic? I didn't say hi to you, brother. What's going on?
When one is there, what is this thing that we understand as male and female? What does that relate as to the energy body? And is there other areas in this telescopic speech? Male, female is always present.
Male and femaleness, or sexuality and physical matter reality, is an expression of a more fundamental sort of duality or differences. And here I'm not sure just what these differences are, but there seems like that it's more fundamental than just a sexuality in the physical physical plane, and that this duality that is essentially the other half of balance. Like in order to have balance, one needs two halves. One needs something to balance against something else. Kind of a basic duality of consciousness or personality, I suspect, that two aspects of the same thing, and this fundamental duality of the individual consciousness is expressed when projected to the physical matter plane, or when the shadow falls on the physical matter plane into male and female. But the same duality is also in each individual. It's not that a male is all of one type and the female is all of another type. Both the balancing energies are available in each type. It's just one characterizes or exemplifies the kind of basis of each of the two balancing members more than the other.
Does it continue to exist? Energy body only? Long habit of physical body?
Yes, it exists, but as the energy body evolves, the duality is brought more and more together, more and more balanced within the individual. I got two thoughts at once there, and let me back up so I don't confuse them. Still, in the energy body, they're particularly in it's almost, again, a telescoping thing. Various states of the energy body. As the energy body becomes more evolved, the duality becomes more and more balanced until I expect at the end point, if there is an end point, this duality is indeed integrated into a single substance. The less, or single non-conflicting personality, the less evolved as one projects from the less, well, as one goes to the cruder and cruder manifestations.
Stop.
Down to physical matter reality, which, by the way, doesn't seem to be the last one in the chain. It seems yet that physical matter reality projects yet onto another. And here this duality seems to still very much be it's not really conflicting, that's the wrong word, but almost like different types of energy, but they're not very well integrated, and one really seeks and needs the other to balance itself. This integration process then takes place as the entity evolves to where the exchange between what we think of as opposite sex becomes less and less dramatic as the entity becomes more evolved. I'm not saying it real well. I hope I've got the idea across.
Does that make sense, what he's saying so far to you guys? Like I'm still trying to figure out why consciousness would need to make. I mean, I get everything is polar, but like, why would the entity or consciousness need, I mean, unless I'm missing something, need to make a dual being like that? I don't know. Maybe he'll talk about it, but I think I'm understanding what he's saying so far.
You're well enough, or willing to take one final subject?
Certainly.
Let us move. Question of the penetration of the area around the Earth by other beings from other spaces or places. This taking place now.
Are you differentiating between physical penetration?
Let's start with physical penetration first.
They're not talking about they're talking about beings penetrating the Earth.
Spaceships,
Sudi.
you want to call them that, are not originating in the planet Earth by humans of Earth. Are any such in the area of the Earth at this point?
The problem is with the word in the area, or with the phrase in the area of, as would be regarded by such space vehicles and their occupants. The answer is yes. As would be regarded by an Earth view of space, it may be considered considerably removed from the area of.
Yes. then point the question more closely. Are such penetrating the actual atmosphere of short research?
Happens from time to time where near Earth space is occupied by such physical alien entities, but it's not a general thing. It's not a rule. It's rather the exception. It's an occasional happening. I don't, as I look ahead in the future, I don't really see any change in that status. Like, I don't see any, public disclosures of, landings on the White House lawn or anything dramatic. I see that occasionally such a traveler does enter in a near-Earth environment.
Does it then covertly?
Yes. Well, not necessarily, but let's say discreetly, which is a refinement of the word covertly.
What means of communication do they use?
I don't know. It seems that some are self-contained units and are not in any kind of routine communication with a base or home or origination. They are independent, self-contained units, and of course they're in communication with members of that unit. They don't necessarily come in groups or packs. I get the picture of communication taking place, but I can't really tell how. Maybe Thor will give me something verbal rather than visual here. Just a minute. There are a lot of different kinds of communication. Some is by light, others is by telepathy. But the telepathy somehow doesn't seem just like a natural kind of telepathy. It seems like some kind of device-aided telepathy, where one, by having the appropriate equipment, can transmit and receive without the benefit of radio waves using thoughts. But it's a machine-aided telepathy that I see.
Then by what also then? What power or energy do they use to move their vehicles, counteract gravity?
We're talking about ETs now.
I don't understand it. It just essentially comes across that it works, that it's not a kind of conventional power that we know of. It's not rocket or anything like what we've thought of. They don't seem to need a large amount of fuel. whether they gather it as they go, like from sunlight or what, but it's not like they have to stockpile the fuel like a rocket has to have its fuel included. And when it's burned up, it needs to be restocked. This kind of gathers fuel as it goes. Perhaps it's the solar energy, I'm not sure. But it doesn't carry along fuel tanks, so to speak. It travels it travels under an energy that is just too alien for me. I don't really understand it or know how to describe it. It just sort of works.
It's not within your ability to understand it or experience.
I think that's the problem.
Then let's turn to the penetration by non-physical entities or individuals. Planet Earth. What penetration is, what is taking place at this point as regards to individuals.
There's just a almost infinite number of non-physical entities which can penetrate to Earth or to a physical matter interaction. Now, that doesn't mean that they can assume a physical, project themselves into physical matter. But they can interact with, be in the neighborhood of, in, around, among, and through, and with physical matter. It's like space is teeming with, space, I say, inner space, wherever this non-physical space is. It's teeming with life like an ocean is teeming with fish. And they're like all around and all different types with all different sorts of interests and some of which couldn't care less about the earth and others are very interested. And they all seem to have their own thing to do or their own, journey. Does a fish have a journey? I guess the salmon do and a few others, but they just seem to be doing whatever it is they're doing, and there's lots of them around. Now, this sort of random penetration of whoever happened to be interested and or passing by has changed some recently with a higher level of organization taking place. More entities who are Earth interested actually working, laying plans, in some way, I suppose one would say, interacting with or interfering with humans on Earth. And it's much like near-Earth future is going to be a big event, sort of a coming attraction. And this organization is centered about a preparation, helping to prepare the humans for this big coming event, which I haven't just been given that information, but I assume they're talking about this geological change, and that it's sort of well known that this big happening is about to happen. I don't understand how about to happen is defined, since this time thing confuses me, but it's it's like there is a time, and the time is coming close. So the Earth is attracting a lot more attention from a non-physical entities than it has in the past because of this. It's like the theater is beginning to fill, or the seats at the circus are starting to fill up, and some of which the early comers are actually down there trying to give moral support or encouragement or help or whatever they can to the about to be performers. I think the ones that are trying to help have a pretty close earth tie. Mostly they are entities that for one reason or another relate strongly and have a lot of very good positive feelings toward Earth and the Earth experiment.
Ask Thor where he fits into this pattern.
He says he likes Earth and hopes everything will work out all right.
Ask him what his relationship is to you.
It doesn't seem to be anything personal, just acquaintances. Evidently, he was in the vicinity one time when I was requesting communications, and such a friendship, so to speak, was started up. I don't have any feelings of, as others have reported, as a part of an oversoul and that kind of personal relationship. I think he's just
Whoa.
Have a friendly entity who doesn't mind sitting down for a chat once in a while. And again, I say he's Earth interested.
Okay, so we have to break right there. We have to do the radio station commercial. Your favorite. Now comes your favorite part of the program, the commercial break. So we have to do the radio station commercial break. And but before we go to that, I want to say that one of our own Void Walkers, brother from another mother, Domek, needs all of your prayers and support. His family, he's one of the biggest supporters of the show, and he's a good friend of mine, and his family's going through a little bit of a rough time right now. So if you can send all of your prayers and positive vibes for Mike Domek and Angela Domek, they really could use it. Really good people. I mean, these are good people, and they're one of us. So any good things you can send them, good vibes, prayers, whatever it is that you want to send spiritually, consciously, any love you want to send their way, they'd much appreciate it. We'll be right back, and we're going to get into this some more. So he did talk about the male and female parts of the self. That's what the title of the audio on the tape was, the Explorer tape. So he got into that, and then I guess they kind of switched into energies or entities that are coming into the earth or the earth realms, which is pretty specific. Now, when I go sifting through all of these Explorer tapes, they're back from the 80s and 90s and things like that. There's only so many that Thomas Campbell were a part of, but I really, really trust him, Yeah, thanks. I'm sure they appreciate that. Any prayers, any love that you can send to the Domeks would be much, much appreciated. All right, we'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. More Lighting the Void coming up live here on the Fringe FM. If you're listening on the radio station, we're also over on YouTube under Lighting the Void.
broadcast. Need another late night fix? You can tune in every weeknight to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop on The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Olivia from Washington. Laid off and trying to keep our little kids from realizing that mommy and daddy haven't eaten in a while.
Roger from California. I'm grateful we could afford our son's surgery. I'm nervous that now we can't really afford food.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Keisha from South Carolina. I've been skipping meals so my 2 kids can eat, but filling up on water doesn't really work.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
This is Malorcas45, fan of the Fridge FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Hey, this is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our 2 signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Roop. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energies.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, right?
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, so we're back here, Lighting the Void live on the Fringe FM. It's a little after 10 o'clock here in Arkansas, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. Deep into the late night, we are listening to the Explorers Project again. I still haven't found anything on a melding or anything like that, but that's okay. Big thanks to all of you guys that sent your prayers and your love to the Domek family, and we can all try to be here for each other. And even in this time of, like, you know, the times that they're going through, he, you know, messaged in here, I'm super grateful to be here tonight. Just love the guys' energy, both of them, Michael and Angela. Thank you guys so much for all your support, being here every night for us, and being a good friend too. So here's the thing. We're going to get back into this, but the recordings with Thomas Campbell are they're kind of slim. There's so many Explorer Projects recordings back from the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that, you know, I don't know the names of all the people that did this. I just recognize Thomas's voice in these. So, but if you want to check out Thomas Campbell, you can. Like, this was back from the 70s and 80s, and he's done his own thing and probably been out of body 1,000 times since then. And, you know, wrote his own book, and he's got his own kind of institute going too. So please go check out Thomas Campbell's work on YouTube. We've had him on the show, and I don't know. I think he's one of the greats when it comes to exploring consciousness. All right, so here we go. We're going to get back in it. And if you guys can, of course, we got a shout out. Like, if you can support the Fringe FM, please do so. That's at fringe.fm. There's a support tab up there as well. All right, here we go. He's talking about, or Robert Monroe's asking him to ask this entity about aliens, how they're coming into the atmosphere, or how they're getting into Earth, and that kind of thing.
He has very fun and sort of good feelings toward Earth and people.
Ask him if he will join us again then. Now, more conversation. How much we appreciate it.
Oh, yes, he'll be around.
If there's any particular way that you can find him again.
He just laughed, and he's kind of a little bit chagrined at the nickname we've given him of Thor, and but he sort of grudgingly accepts it and indicates that just essentially calling him by name will be sufficient.
Ask him for a better name.
Thor. That's his name?
This is what started this whole Thor business to begin with. But I'll ask him. He says that'll do.
Like to add it. Grudgingly, he accepts much further.
Well, evidently any name he would grudgingly accept. So he doesn't really relate very much to names. I think the only, no, he says it really, doesn't make that much difference that Thor will serve. He's had it this long, he might as well let it go.
Well then, thank him very much for this long and very interesting and significant conversation. I mean, we will certainly make good and constructive use of material.
So he was actually pleased to have the conversation sort of renewed with him. When I went into this state, I kind of thought of Thor just because I had communicated with him before and made an attempt at finding him again, and it didn't come very quickly. I tried, and it's just like he wasn't there. And after some minutes of calling for him, sure enough, he popped up, and I was under the impression that he was a very long ways off and was no longer in the immediate vicinity, but had, well, I guess, symbolically speaking, had heard his name and came by. And when he did come by, he seemed to be very happy to see me, and I was very happy to see him. So it was like a reunion of sorts, and he's very amenable to the idea of continuing discussions.
That will be very good. We'll continue in a very...
He had just kind of given up on us and figured that we had forgotten him, and he didn't really expect to hear from us. It was kind of a sort of like a long-lost relative calling up in the middle of the night, I guess.
Well, tell him that we will not so long.
Okay.
I can begin your return slowly and easy back.
Okay.
Debriefing. Like a rebalancer for you?
A what?
Would you like that balancing formula, or would you feel it's necessary?
No, I don't think it's necessary. Just take me a little bit to
take your time.
Get that heavy lead blanket off. That stayed with me from when that tone went off. It never really left me.
Take your time.
Man, I'd like to know what tones they were using.
Seemed like the only way to get rid of it really was to move.
See if I can find a recharger here thing.
It's kind of funny the way Thor was, he's sort of putting words in my mouth. I was speaking, but he was putting the words there. And occasionally as something would come out a little strange and I wasn't quite sure whether it was said the way he had intended, I'd kind of ask him, is that all right? He'd kind of pat me on the shoulder in a figurative way and say, you're doing fine, you know. Just, that's the way I said it, or that's the way I intended it. Keep right on going. It's okay.
Very good.
You know, so he was encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a visual picture of him at all? Or was it just a...
No, just
a presence feeling.
Yeah, I suspect so. It wasn't I don't know. In the absence of any shape at all, I expect I kind of filled in something that was taller than it was wide, because that's the way people come.
Yeah.
But
most of them.
There wasn't any detail in it. You know, I didn't see like arms and legs and toes or anything like that.
Was definitely male, though.
Yeah, he's definitely male.
Mm-hmm. So I know you used the he a great deal, and so I presumed that it wasn't. Well, I will give you some light, but get your arms and legs going, because I don't have a gauge on you, so I don't know where you are.
Well, that heaviness is beginning to leave pretty well. How long was that?
And there you have it, an example of what happens when a simple research effort is complicated by the entrance of a third party, so to speak. Perhaps a better word is improved or augmented instead of complicated. In any event, it should provide something for everyone, a little technology and a backstage view of our research effort, something about spaceships, a perspective on an upcoming big event, and the who and how of someone who doesn't mind being called Thor. I hope you've enjoyed it, and this is Robert Monroe with a Lowell Thomas. So long for now.
That's the first time I heard him use his actual name.
Here is another Explorer tape.
Let me see if I can find another one with him in it. I did find the CIA document, though. Let me get this real quick. This CIA document here. So you could get the document about, now this isn't the Explorers project, but you can find the CIA document about the Gateway Project. And it was tasked by the government in, it says this was approved for release, though, in September 10th, 2003. The analysis and assessment of the Gateway process, the June 9th, 1983. And it just says, to the commander of the U.S. Army Operational Group in Fort Meade, Maryland. It says, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the Gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. So I was 1 year old when the government got interested in Robert Monroe and what they were doing. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business, initially based on conversations with a physician who took the Gateway training with me. So a member of the government actually went in and took the Gateway training, and then he brought in, it says he brought in a physician, I guess, so a doctor maybe. It doesn't say his name, though. I found it necessary to delve into various sources for information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature and functioning of human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and reasonably lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemisphere synchronization technique employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved recourse to theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the time-space dimension and the means by which expanded human consciousness transcends it in achieving Gateway's objectives. And finally, I again found it necessary to use physics to bring the whole phenomenon of the out-of-body state into the language of physical science, to remove the stigma of its occult connotations and put it in a frame of reference suited to objective assessment. So he goes into, I mean, it's it's a big document here. He said he goes into describing biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation. So he analyzes hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation. And his name was Wayne M. McDonald, Lieutenant Colonel. And I guess this guy was out of, it looks like Detroit. Yeah. So this was, it doesn't say if the CIA itself actually, see, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, Fort George Meade, Maryland. Yeah, it doesn't say if the CIA itself was actually involved, but this is a CIA document. I can show it to you, actually. I have to bring it up on the thing. If you guys are listening on the radio, I guess you just have to imagine it. Oh, that's not what I need. I need the window capture. Window capture. Yeah. So now, so that you guys can see this, let me zoom into it. This is supposedly an official CIA document here. It's from CIA.gov. So they didn't release this information till 20 years later. It's almost exactly 20 years later. It's actually a few months shy of it, isn't it? Or am I getting my math wrong there? But let's see, what does he say here? So here's an assessment of what he was tasked with by the government and the Army. So I'm going to start right here. He says, I began the narrative by briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation, so that their objectives and mode of functioning could be compared in the reader's mind with the gateway experience as the model of its underlying mechanics was developed. Additionally, that introductory material is useful in supporting the conclusions of the paper. I indicate that at times these related techniques may provide useful entry points to accelerate movement into the gateway experience. He goes on to Niels Bohr. The physicist once responded to his son's complaints about the obtuse nature of certain concepts in physics by saying, "You're not thinking, you're merely being logical." The physics of altered human consciousness deals with some conceptualizations that are not easily grasped or visualized exclusively in the context of ordinary left brain linear thinking. So, to borrow Dr. Bohr's mode of expression, parts of this paper will require not only logic, but a touch of right brain intuitive insight to achieve a complete, comfortable grasp of the concepts involved. Nevertheless, once this is done, I am confident that their construction and application will stand up to the test of rational critique. So he's actually thinking positive about it. And then he goes on to say, paradoxically, having gone to such great lengths to avoid trying to render judgments based on an occult or a dogmatic frame of reference, in the end I found it necessary to return, at least briefly, to the question of the impact of the gateway experience on common belief systems. I did so because although it was essential to avoid attempting to render an assessment in the context of such systems, I felt that it was necessary, after having completed the analysis, to point out that the resulting conclusions do not do any violence to the fundamental mainstream of either Eastern or Western belief systems. Unless that point is clearly established, the danger exists that some people will reject the whole concept of the gateway experience in the mistaken belief that it contradicts and is therefore alien to all they hold to be right and true. So he's even worried about, so he's even considering here, like, if I release this, like, this is going to mess up some people's belief systems, right? That's what he's saying. I don't, let's see. This study is certainly not designed to be the last word on the subject, but I hope that the validity of its basic structure and of the fundamental concepts upon which it is based will make it a useful guide for other USA, what is that, INSCOM personnel. I guess that's means something. I don't know what it means. Military personnel who are required to take the gateway training or to work with the materials. So this is, maybe this was the first time that any military person or any government official got involved with Robert Monroe. So I don't think we have to go over hypnosis, but the introduction here is, in order to describe the Monroe Institute technique for achieving altered states of consciousness, or the gateway experience, involving brain hemisphere synchronization, or hemisync, the most effective way to begin is to briefly profile the basic mechanics which underlie operation of related methods such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. It is easiest to effectively describe that gateway is by beginning with a short description of those associated techniques that share some common aspects with the gateway experience, but which are nevertheless different. In this way, we can develop a frame of reference at the outset which will provide useful concepts to explain and understand gateway by comparison as we proceed. So then he goes on to explain all of the, man, wouldn't it have been cool to be like an analyst for the military and do this stuff? Like being ordered to go out to the Monroe Institute and do this. I need you to go do this and then report back. So we kind of know how, I mean, I don't have to read hypnosis, but he goes into some really extensive kind of like descriptions of how hypnosis works. But let's read transcendental meditation, okay? On the other hand, transcendental meditation works in a distinctly different fashion. In this technique, intense and protracted single-minded concentration on the process of drawing energy up the spinal cord ultimately results in what appears to be creation of acoustical standing waves in the cerebral ventricles, which are then conducted to the gray matter in the cerebral, cortex on the right side of the brain. So he drew pictures, like this is his military report. I guess so his commander could, look, there's the homunculus. So his commander could figure this out. As a result, according to Bentov, these waves will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes and on up. The Bentov biomedical model, as described in a book by Lee Sanella, MD, entitled Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence, states that the standing acoustical waves are the result of the altered rhythm of heart sounds, which are occasioned by prolonged practice of meditation, and which set up sympathetic vibrations in the walls of the fluid-filled cavities which comprise the third and lateral ventricles of the brain. In addition, according to Bentov, the states of bliss described by those whose Kundalini symptoms have completed the full loop along the hemispheres may be explained as a self-stimulation of the pleasure centers in the brain caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. So Bentov also notes that most of the described symptoms start on the left side of the body, means that it is most likely a development occurring in the right hemisphere of the brain, right? So although normally a period of meditation involving intense concentration and practice for 5 years or some is required to bring up the Kundalini, Bentov states that exposure to mechanical or acoustical vibrations in the range of 4 to 7 hertz cycles per second for protracted periods may achieve the same effect. He also cites as an example repeated riding in a car whose suspension and seat combination produced that range of vibrations, or being exposed for long periods of time to these frequencies caused, for instance, by an air conditioning duct. So, yeah, he also notes that the cumulative effect of these vibrations may be able to trigger a spontaneous physio-kundalini sequence in susceptible people who have a particularly sensitive nervous system. Man, I remember when I was a kid, I used to fall asleep in the car, man. My dad, like if my dad told me, like, if he couldn't put me to sleep because he raised as like a single dad, you know, he would just put me in the car and drive down the road and I'd go to sleep. So that's pretty interesting. All right. So anyways, back to the CIA document. So then he goes into biofeedback, and he's just explaining all of this to his commander before he even gets into the report of what's actually going on at the Monroe Institute, right? So he says the third consciousness altering methodology, which will be briefly described as biofeedback. Biofeedback is somewhat unique in that it actually employs the self-cognitive powers of the left hemisphere to gain access to such areas of the right brain as the lower cerebral, motor and sensory cortices, and assorted pain or pleasure centers. Instead of suppressing the left hemisphere as is done in hypnosis, or largely bypassing and ignoring it as is done in transcendental meditation, biofeedback teaches the left hemisphere first to visualize the desired result and then to recognize the feelings associated with the experience of successful right hemisphere access to the specific lower cerebral. It's a lot of science stuff, or the lower cerebral cortex. I don't know why he has a comma in front of that. Pain or pleasure or other areas in the manner needed to produce the desired result. So special self-monitoring devices, such as the digital thermometer, are used to inform the left brain when it succeeds in keying the right hemisphere into accessing the appropriate area. Yeah, so like if anybody thinks that the Monroe Institute didn't like scientifically look into this, they're crazy. Because if they didn't, the government definitely did. Once this is done, the left brain can then repeatedly instruct the right brain to reestablish the pathways involved so as to produce the same external objective measures of success. In this way, the pathways are strengthened and emphasized to such an extent that left brain consciousness is enabled to access appropriate areas and the right brain using a conscious demand mode. For example, if the subject wishes to increase the circulation in the left leg in order to speed up healing, now this is cool, He may concentrate with his left brain on achieving that result while carefully monitoring a digital thermometer connected to the left leg. When the concentrated effort begins to achieve success, the digital thermometer will register an increase in the temperature of the left leg. All right, so I get it, biofeedback, right? At that point, the subject can mentally, left brain, or associate the sensations experienced with the result achieved and can begin to emphasize by memory recall the same process to cause its strengthening by affirmation and repetition. So you could block pain, you can enhance healing, enhance pleasure. So biofeedback. Hopefully we got all that stuff. And let's see, display of a subject's brainwave patterns on a cathode ray tube has proven to be a laboratory validated means by which subjects may quickly learn to place themselves in. Yeah. I mean, man, they measured this stuff like as scientifically good as you can. All right, so gateway and hemisync. So he says, now that we have briefly profiled the basic mechanics of the principal techniques for altering or expanding consciousness, which share some of the objectives and or methods employed in the gateway experience, we may proceed to focus on what that technique actually involves. Fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. The participant then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers. Can you imagine as like a commander in the Army reading this, or the CIA or whatever? What differentiates the gateway experience from forms of meditation is its use of the hemisync technique, which is defined in a monograph by Monroe Institute trainer Melissa Jagger as, quote, a state of consciousness defined when the EEG patterns of both hemispheres are simultaneously equal in amplitude and frequency. Although hemisync seems to be rather rare and of only short duration in ordinary human consciousness, Melissa states that, quote, audio techniques developed by Bob Monroe can induce and sustain hemisync with the Institute's basic Focus 3 tapes. And she also notes that studies conducted by Elmer and Alice Green at the Menninger Foundation have shown that a subject with 20 years of training in Zen meditation could consistently establish hemisync at will, sustaining it for over 15 minutes. Dr. Stuart Twemlow, a psychiatrist and a research associate of the Monroe Institute, reports that in our studies of the effect of the Monroe tape system on brain waves, we have found that the tapes encourage the focusing of brain energy. It can be measured, as with a light bulb, in watts, into a narrower and narrower, I can't say that right, frequency band. But this focusing of energy is not unlike the yoga concept of one-pointedness, which we may translate in Western terms as a single-mindedness. Dr. Twemlow goes on to observe that as the individual gets into the tapes beyond Focus 3, there is a gradual increase in brainwave size, which is a measure of brain energy or power. And then there's like lamp versus laser metaphor. I don't know if you guys want to get into all that. It's not far. Let's listen to it. It's a government document, whatever. Lamp versus laser. Melissa Jagger uses a metaphor to help clarify the process involved in the use of hemisync in the gateway experience. She points out that the human mind in its natural state may be likened to an ordinary lamp, which expends energy in the form of both heat and light, but in a chaotic, incoherent way, which diffuses its energy over a wide area of rather limited depth. On the other hand, the human mind, under the discipline of hemisync, acts after the fashion of a laser beam, which produces a disciplined stream of light. The stream of energy is projected with total coherence of both frequency and amplitude, such that the surface area of a laser beam contains billions of times the concentrated energy found in a similar surface area on the sun. Gateway assumes that once the frequency and amplitude of the human brain are rendered coherent, it is possible to begin accelerating both so that the human mind is soon resonating at even or ever higher vibrational levels. The mind can then bring itself into synchronization with more sophisticated and rarefied energy levels in the universe. The mind, when operating at these increasingly rarefied levels, is assumed to be capable of processing the information thus received through the same fundamental matrix by which it makes sense of ordinary physical sensory input to achieve meaning in a cognitive context. Such meaning is usually perceived visually in the form of symbols. Look at that. Such meaning is usually perceived visually in the form of symbols, but may also be perceived as astonishing flashes of holistic intuition, or even in the form of scenarios involving both visual and oral perception, like auras and stuff. The mechanics by which the mind exercises the consciousness function will be addressed in more detail later in this paper. So this frequency following response goes on to explain how they put different frequencies in different ears and different, ears, so they come to that main frequency where they sync both together, both hemispheres together. Role of resonance. However, brain coherence through entertainment to beat frequencies introduced via stereo headphones is only part of the reason why the gateway system works. It is also designed to achieve the physical quietude characteristic of deep transcendental meditative states, which brings about a complete alteration of the fundamental resonance pattern associated with the sound frequencies produced by the human body. Yoga, Zen, or transcendental meditation, if practiced long enough, will produce a change in the sound frequency with which the human heart resonates throughout the entire body. According to Bentov, this change in resonance results from elimination of what the medical professional calls the, bifurcation echo? Bifurcation echo, I guess. So that the sound of the heartbeat can move synchronously up and down the circulatory system in harmonious resonance approximately 7 times a second. See, I didn't know all this, man. Bentov describes the role played by the bifurcation echo as follows, quote, "When the left ventricle of the heart ejects blood, the aorta, being elastic, balloons out just beyond the valve and causes a pressure pulse to travel down along the aorta. When the pressure pulse reaches the bifurcation in the lower abdomen, which is where the aorta forks into and goes into the legs, part of the pressure pulse rebounds and starts traveling up the aorta. If in the meantime the heart ejects more blood and a new pressure pulse is traveling down, these two pressure points will eventually collide somewhere along the aorta and produce an interference pattern. So by placing the body in a sleep-like state, the gateway tapes achieve the same goal as meditation in that it places the body in such a profoundly relaxed state that the bifurcation echo slowly fades away as the heart lessens the force and frequency with which it pushes blood into the aorta." Yeah, this is all new to me. The result is a regular rhythmic sine wave pattern of sound which echoes throughout the body and rises up into the head in sustained resonance. The amplitude of this sine wave pattern, when measured with a sensitive seismograph type instrument, is about 3 times the average of the sound volume produced by the heart when it is operating normally. So if you guys want to read this here, I'll drop this CIA document into chat too. I just think it's interesting, man. Really interesting. But it goes on to say, like, when you explain things scientifically, it doesn't sound so outlandish, right? It doesn't sound like anything crazy. But as he keeps going down, he keeps talking about consciousness and energy and all this other stuff. Then he gets into holograms. Hello, right? Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding at certain frequencies in a 3-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram. The concept of the hologram can be most easily understood by using an example cited by Bentov, in which he asked the reader to visualize a bowl full of water into which 3 pebbles are dropped. As the ripple created by the simultaneously entry of the 3 pebbles radiates outwards towards the rim of the bowl, Bentov further asked the reader to visualize that the surface of the water is suddenly flash frozen, so that the ripple pattern is preserved instantly. The ice is removed, leaving the 3 pebbles still laying at the bottom of the bowl. Then the ice is exposed to a powerful, coherent source of light, such as a laser. The result will be a 3-dimensional model or representation of the position of the 3 pebbles suspended in midair. Holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that, for example, it is possible to take a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water and view it under magnification to see small organisms not visible to the naked eye when the glass of water itself is examined. The whole concept of holography, despite its scientific implications, has only been known to the physicist since the underlying mathematical principles were worked out by Denis Gabor in 1947, and he later won a Nobel Prize for his work. That's pretty interesting. So he goes on to talk about pure light and lasers. More about holographic projections, the consciousness matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields. Some are at rest and some are in motion. This is in 1983? I'll probably lose some of you if I get too detailed with this, but I read all this before and it's fascinating. So look at this. The consciousness energy grid. The left hemisphere consciousness grid acts like the mind's computer software to reduce input from right hemisphere to verbal symbols and concepts. The right hemisphere consciousness grid reduces 3-dimensional holographic images to 2-dimensional. Human consciousness can do this because it has the capacity to duplicate aspects of its own hologram, project them out, perceive that projection, put it through comparison with the memory aspect where its evaluation standards of measured are stored, of its own hologram, and measure or sense the difference using 3-dimensional geometry, and then binary, go-no, go-pulse to yield verbal cognition about the self. Dude, it gets pretty look. And then this lieutenant colonel gets into time, space dimensions. Then he gets into intervening dimensions, subatomic particles, dimensions in between. How in the hell do you really think that his commanding officer understood all this? And then he goes on to the special status out-of-body experience. I'm going to see what let's just get to the conclusion because we're losing a little time here. He's talking about torus fields here, from Big Bang to torus. Our place and time. You think they fired him after he reported this, like they got rid of him? This is an actual CIA document here, okay? I'm just letting you know. Quality of consciousness, consciousness in perspective. The universe, our galaxy. Tell me that he didn't have you know what I mean? Tell me he didn't have an experience when he went to the Gateway program, right? When the military told him to go to the Gateway program and report back, I bet this dude had such an experience. He couldn't wait to report this, I bet. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit too. Sorry, I don't know, you guys can't see it. All right, I'm trying to fast forward to his conclusion. It's a report, right? So he has to have a conclusion. Remote viewing, the living body map. So he went into focus 10, focus 15, travel into the past, focus 21, the future. the out-of-body movement. The role of REM sleep. Does he have a conclusion here? The motivations behind it? Here it is. All right, conclusion. There is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering Gateway to be a plausible in terms of its essential objectives. Intuitional insights of not only personal, but of a practical and professional nature would seem to be within bounds of reasonable expectations. However, a phased approach for entering the Gateway experience in an accelerated mode would seem to be required if the time needed to reach advanced states of altered consciousness is to be brought within more manageable limits from the standpoint of establishing an organization-wide exploitation of Gateway's potential. You know what he just said right there? Basically, he's telling the military, he's like, look, we need more time and more stuff involved with this if we're going to be able to exploit what these people have figured out or use it to our advantage. That's what exploiting is, right? The most promising approach suggested in the foregoing study involves the following steps. A. Begin by using the Gateway hemisync tapes to achieve enhanced brain focus and to induce hemisphere synchronization. B. Then add strong REM sleep frequencies to induce left brain, quiescence and deep physical relaxation. Then provide hypnotic suggestion designed to enable an individual to induce deep autohypnotic states at will. To use autohypnotic suggestion to attain much enhanced focus on concentration and motivation and rapidly progressing through Focus 12 exercises. Then repeat steps through A and B following use of the autohypnotic suggestion that an out-of-body movement will occur and be remembered. Repeat step E to achieve facility in gaining out-of-body states under conscious control. Alter hypnotic suggestion to stress ability to consciously control out-of-body movements and maintain it even after REM sleep states end. Encourage pursuit of knowledge. Be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. So he's actually telling the government here, I think we should pursue this. I think we should get groups of people, bring them in, government people, encourage more advanced Gateway participants to build holographic patterns of successful attainment and rapid progress for advanced colleagues to assist them in progressing through the system. If these experiments are carried through, it is to be hoped that we will truly find a gateway to Gateway and to the realm of practical application for the whole system of techniques which it compromises. And then he cites his sources here. That's pretty trippy, man. Again, you can go to cia.gov/reading room docs, and then you can just download this in PDF. The real question is, though, what we need to be asking ourselves is, did they? Usually when they do a conclusion, like a CIA document does a conclusion, they state whether it works or not, and you know, if you've ever read a document from the FOIA stuff or Black Vault or whatever, they'll usually end a report that states whether it's real or it's not real, or they found something there, and then whoever did the report suggests that they should keep investigating. Well, he's definitely doing that. He's definitely telling the government back in the 80s that we should keep investigating this. And he's talking about entities. He's talking about holograms. You know what I mean? This is in the 80s. It's 2024 right now. So the real question we should ask is, like, did they keep investigating? Did they send some people in there and figure something out? Because the Monroe Institute, if you go visit the website nowadays, isn't getting as much support as they used to. Like, you would think they would be getting, in my opinion, they should be getting a ton of support, regardless if Monroe's alive or dead. Or, shoot, we got to get out of here. But, or like, the government got everything they needed to from them, learned all of it, and used it. Who knows? I don't know. It's pretty interesting, though. All right, again, I want you guys send out your prayers if you haven't to the Domek family. Thank you guys for listening tonight. So what I'm going to try to start doing is putting out stuff on the weekends for the Patreon, and I just really want to finish those audio guided stuff because I've taken everything that I've learned from HemiSync and the esoteric and the occult, and I've made some audios of my own. Some of them are in the Patreon shop. Like, so if you get them through Patreon, they're voice guided by me, but if you get them through Patreon and pay for them individually, honestly, you could beat the system. I'm just asking you don't do it, but there's really no way around it for me either. But if you just sign up for like $10 a month, you can get access to everything in there, right? So I've seen a lot of people do that. They'll sign up for like $10 a month to download all the shit and then bail. So whatever. I can't get around it, you know, at least not yet. And there was something else I was going to talk to. I really don't want to end the week and forget anything. Oh, Monday I'll be on the one-on-one podcast, I think. And there was another podcast I put on my Facebook page. Shit, I forget the name of it. I feel so bad, but it was one of the coolest conversations I had with Donovan, I think his name is, a British listener. I'll leave a link to it in the video, right? So I hate not to promote it because it was really a cool conversation, actually, really down to earth. Anyways, I think we're done. Love you guys. Good night, sweet dreams, all that good stuff. Go to the Fringe FM, support if you can. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you can. Please share it, like it, all that good stuff. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Love you.
You're listening to Lighting the Void